Here.
Don Walsh. Here. David Belver.
Here.
John Malone.
Here.
Fiona Pearson.
Here.
Tricia Kramer. Here. Greg Wolf.
Here.
Dina Allard.
Here.
And Jim Jinks. Everyone's present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item tonight is item 3. Item A is the quarterly consent donations, which were in your e-packets, which brings us to item 3B, public comment. Anyone that would like to address the town council this evening on any subject may do so. Just come to the podium, state your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Perdian, we spoke before the meeting, and because you're carrying the thoughts of multiple people, we will allow you 6 minutes this evening. So with that, please.
Just give me 1 second to start my timer so
Sure.
I don't abuse my time. Okay, my name is Alexander Perdian, and I live at 278 South Rolling Acres, Cheshire, Connecticut. I am here to talk about some of the issues that are going on in my community. You guys might know about the issues that are going on with the beagles that are right next to the area where North and South Rolling Acres meet. A couple people have been telling me quite a few stories about different problems that's been going on. I've been going door to door talking to each and every single one of my neighbor on North Rolling Acres, South Rolling Acres, Broadbridge, and Overlook, and I have been hearing the same story over and over and over again. Dogs are constantly barking, constantly keeping people up at night, and disturbing people that work at home from making a living. And specifically, Didi Conqueres, I can't really pronounce her last name, I do apologize. She has reported that dogs are digging up her yard. They're digging under her fence, causing property damage. They're leaving droppings in her garden, and she's worried about the safety because she doesn't know how healthy the dogs are really. And she's afraid that they will attack her just like the feral animals that they act like. Teresa and Don DuPont have been telling me that similar stories. Teresa works from home, and they disrupt her while she's working. Whenever they get out, they constantly bark in her yard as well, and they roam around, without collars, without leashes, which is breaking 2 major rules as far as dog ownership goes, plus they are not properly contained. From what I understand, animal control not only finds them quite often, but they also have given them carriers, so there should be no reason why the dogs get out like they do. She's also concerned about them pooping in her yard, and she's worried that the dogs are going to attack her or even her own dog, which she also owns a dog, and she's a responsible dog owner, Mike Formica has been telling me that they like to hang out quite often behind his house, which is right next to the tennis courts, and when all the dogs are working each other up, playing and barking all night long, guess who they're keeping up? Not only him, but the rest of the community nearby. And it is just unfair that all of us have to deal with that constant interruption. Paul Emery, which lives right on the corner of Burbridge and North Rolling Acres, going towards the area where North Rolling Acres and South Rolling Acres meet up around that bend. His son is afraid of dogs. Me personally, I understand fear. I personally have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression along with a couple other things, and I understand how his son must feel when they're barking in their yard and when they are keeping them up all night long. It is terrible that the owners are allowing this to happen, and it's terrible that it seems like not really too much is being done outside of issuing people fines that, you know, they may or may not pay based off of their financial situation, you know? Not only has animal control been constantly involved with trying to take the situation to the next level with trying to not only, like I said before, provide crates and provide a bunch of other stuff that helps contain the dogs, but not only that, but a lot of people are saying, let's help them try to fix their fence. Well, my question is, everybody else has to fix their own fences based off of the damage that the dogs are doing. Why is it that the community has to put out more effort and more money outside of the damages that the dogs are doing to repair their own property? You know what I'm saying? And plus, he's also worried about the dogs possibly attacking him, his son, or somebody else as well. And me personally, I've had a few concussions during the past few years, and I get migraines, I get cluster headaches, and sometimes sound is just plain painful for me. I cannot handle it sometimes, and whenever I need quiet, it is because I'm in pain. And if the dogs are constantly barking in my yard or in the yard across from me or the yard next to me, and I just need some peace and quiet, there's really no way to get it outside of going to the dollar store and get some earplugs or something like that. It is not fair to me, it is not fair to my community, and there has to be more done than just finding them, because obviously this is not enough, and all of us are sick and tired of it, to the point where I even formed a community watch, and I have everybody that is in my community on a text format where I'm able to give information to people of my community, and they're able to give information to me on when they get out and where they're at. All I'm trying to do is help animal control. I'm trying to help the police department, and I'm trying to help out the people that are in my community that are just fed up with the situation. I know I'm running short on time, so I'll wrap it up. All I really want to do is be able to enforce stricter rules when it comes to dog ownership, as far as roaming laws, which already exist, leash laws that already exist, and plus on top of that, from what I understand, the owners also beg for money on Facebook for being able to afford dog food, which from what Animal Controls says is that the dogs are properly fed and properly vaccinated. If they are properly fed, why are the owners begging for money on Facebook? So that is all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Purdy, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you succinctly summing up not only your concerns, but those of your neighbors as well. As I mentioned when we spoke earlier, there are several departments that are involved in this. You mentioned a couple of them, but we are currently and presently working on a longer-term solution to this, so.
I only went over my time by 35 seconds.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that would like to address the council may do so now. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4, which is the approval of minutes. We are approving the minutes of, and I don't have that with me, so what, which meetings?
September 10th.
That's it?
Hold on. September 10th and September.
Was it the, are we doing the third,
Yes, September 10th and 30th, that's what it.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. We're approving the minutes of 9:10 and 9:30. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Noel. Moves us to the consent calendar, item 5. Mr. Jenks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 100824-1, consent calendar for October 8th, 2024. Be resolved the town council approves the consent calendar for October 8th, 2024 as follows.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Ms. Allard, thank you. Consent calendar, all those in favor? Mr. Walsh, if you'd like to raise your hand, you can do so to make the motion officially unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to old business, and we will start with a Bartlam Park South update. Mr. Kimball.
All right, thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As is per tradition, I have some show and tell in the town manager's report with some photos of the most recent developments. As you'll see in the first 4 photos, the power to the lights at the turf field were activated on Friday, September 20th, and the Musco lighting control system and application is working well. Weston and Sampson has been compiling punch list items and working through inspections, both the end of last week and this week. We have purchased 4 27-foot 4-row bleachers, which each have a capacity of 72 people, and have been ordered along with 4 27-foot player benches with backs. Also, the band shell design was completed last month, and a deposit was made with Polygon for the fabrication to begin. Estimated fabrication completion date is late January. And finally, the tentative plan for substantial completion and acceptance of the park, again, with the acceptance of the band shell, pending an agreement, and something we'll work with Attorney D'Onofrio on, for any outstanding punch list items beyond the band shell, should be within the next couple of weeks. And I have added a few more, I think, drone photos from earlier today. We've had some nice picture-taking weather recently. So I know they're a little small, happy to email these around, but they're also available on our Projects Around Town page. But you'll see with the nice run of weather, the grass on the Great Lawn has been coming in nicely, and you see the picnic grove there. So we're anxious to get it open, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And I think that concludes my report.
Questions regarding Bartlam South? Mr. Walsh.
Just one quick thing. I know we were talking about it. Is there any other more movement on the old concession stand? Is that going to be taken over by Public Works or?
So I think it's still pending. We've had also some discussions with Cheshire Junior Football, potential opportunity to explore that I can give you some more updates on in the future, with possibly building a storage building in that general area. If potentially with the town paying for some of the materials and them and some of their volunteers covering the labor piece. So that's something we're exploring, kind of very early stages, but that certainly impacts whether or not the concession stand is available for, or even needed for additional storage. It might be kind of a win-win situation. So more to come on that and kind of pending more discussions with CJF.
Anyone else? Mr. Jinks.
Yeah, Sean, so I noticed there's some movement on the mountain bike trails project in Yankee Expressway, it looks like, based on your report.
We're
I'm not surprising you, right?
No.
We're jumping ahead to manager's report from, this is just Bartlam South for now.
Right. Sorry. Okay. I was
It's a
reading.
preview of coming attractions.
Never mind.
So, yeah, so hold that for like item 10, so.
Well, I do have one quick question about the park, though.
Yeah.
And we had talked about sort of a grand opening kind of thing. Are we still thinking in the spring for that, or no?
I think so. We could do, and maybe something to discuss, maybe we'll send some emails around it. We could do something of a soft opening if you'd like, and the weather isn't necessarily working in our favor as we get closer to winter. But we will be opening the rest of the park up soon for the trails, and we could maybe do something, maybe we do both if the council's interested in doing so. And again, we've kind of been piecemeal opening it, right? The turf field opened, and now the rest of the park, absent the band shell. But yes, certainly I think the largest of the events planned would be when we were able to sort of christen the new band shell and have the rest of the entire project completed. At this point, looking like spring is the target for that. So we can do either or both, so ultimately up to the council's preference.
Okay. I wasn't advocating for either way. I was curious what the thought process was at this point.
No immediate plans, and I think some of that's pending, again, that punch list item and how close we are to a soft opening. But again, we can certainly have something of a smaller ceremony there, and then I think a larger thing when we have the band shell available.
Ms. Pearson and then Mr. Vellever.
Yeah, I would support a soft opening, I think, just because a lot of residents have asked me about the opening of the park and when is open, so that, I think that would clarify for the town that, yes, we are now open for visitors. And then, yeah, a bigger event in the spring.
and I probably should have said, as I thought of that, we are planning, again, subject to this all being wrapped up, which is looking very good here in the next few weeks. We are planning sort of the traditional holiday kickoff gathering tree lighting that we've done in the past, now to be at Bartlett South with rides and games and activities and making use of the entire new space. So Park and Rec has been planning that along with decorations and all sorts of stuff. So that, we might be able to do a soft opening just before that, but that's also going to
Or
be a
part
great
of that,
opportunity,
yeah.
or maybe
Yeah, I
that's
think
part of it.
part of that would be a good
And-
idea, yeah.
Exactly, and so that's kind of in the thought process too, depending on the timing. We just combine it with that as kind of the grand winter opening and then a spring,
Yeah,
bigger opening to follow.
I think that sounds great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, just couple quick questions. One is, I think it's great if we have, both, or, the most we can, get the public to acknowledge and know that this park is up and running, and it would be great. Question for you is on the use of the grass. I mean, I guess my question is the grass, any events, are we talking about people using the grass, or are they not on the grass? I mean, I guess my question is, how strong is the grass now, and do we use it? Do we keep people off it until the spring, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. The turf has been establishing. It's not fully there. You wouldn't want to put, tents and whatnot on it. I think, barring, we had some of that heavy rain recently, and I was out there kind of walking around, and you take one step onto the grass, and you don't want to walk further because it was a little soupy as it was still kind of getting established. As we get through winter, but it's a good question. We've talked about that with respect to the winter fest, for instance. We might need to keep people off of the Great Lawn. The rest of the picnic grove area is all very established, and that you can walk all through, and that's great. And it could change. We've had a lot of great grass growing weather in the last couple of weeks, and so it could be pretty well established. But more to come. I'll defer to the experts on it. For sure.
And my other question just goes to the band shell. Obviously, it looks like fabrication to begin, estimate for completion is January. Is putting it in the, potentially the middle of winter, is there any difference between putting it in January or putting it in warmer weather? Does that make a difference in terms of its, how it gets installed, anything like that?
Right, so the base is being built, the concrete base, 2 feet up off the ground, and all of that is, per specs from Polygon, and built there for the area you see there at the front of that upper left photo. That will be done, again, all weather dependent, but that should be done, I believe, this year, and sort of ready for installation. And then the fabricated band shell comes ready for kind of just really installing bolting. You're not doing any more foundation work at that point. Again, all of that, as I think I've said before, is subject to Polygon's own schedule. January could quickly turn to February, and clearly that's not necessarily, an ideal construction time or season. Of course, it depends on the winter we're having, but they indicated it's not an enormously long time. Once they have it on site and it's shipped here, the installation wasn't, it wasn't like months or anything.
No, and I just wasn't sure if it makes a difference, the temperature you're putting it in, or does that really make
I
any difference?
think the foundation should all be completed, again, barring any other changes, it should be completed before the winter.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move to our school building construction update. Welcome, Mr. Gussenberg.
Is this on? Yeah. Good evening. I saw yesterday, I watched the September 30th joint meeting that you had with the Board of Education. So I know Vin Massiano did give you a fairly recent update to where we are. Since I spoke with you last month, we've had 2 joint meetings with the Board of Education. The first meeting, we had a presentation on the plans and specifications for the North End School, approve those and send those up to the state. The second meeting, we went through the North End plans and specs and once again reviewed all of those, and both agencies approved and sent those up to the state. We've had 2 meetings with the state, 2 long formal meetings. There's been a number of informal meetings also between the architects. Those are all-day meetings as the state representative is going through a very extensive checklist that they have of all the things that we need to have in place to get approval. And we are waiting right now for approval on the North End School. We were hoping to get it this week and be out to bid sometime this week or next, but we haven't yet received that letter. So that's where we're at. We're assuming that we should be receiving letters from the state over the next couple of weeks. We'll be going out to bid as soon as those come in. We're ready, and we're right on schedule to start construction in mid to late December. We tentatively have a groundbreaking planned for December 16th, and obviously we'll want the council and the Board of Ed and everybody with their shovels and be ready to go, and then the exciting part starts. So that's where we're at right now, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Mr. Gussenberg? You're getting off easy tonight,
The
Mr.
shortest one
Gussenberg.
I've ever had. That's amazing. If I could just take 1 second, when I
Sure.
watched the meeting of your September 30th meeting, I noticed that you got into a discussion about the School Modernization Committee. As you know, I sat in on that one and in fact chaired 2 of the 3 subcommittees that we had. And that was a fairly extensive 2-year study, which many of you were involved with. And one of the subcommittees that I chaired was a subcommittee which went around to each of the schools, sat down with the staffs from each school, and multi-hour meetings as they described some of the experiences they have working in the various schools that we have here in the region. There were no minutes taken of those meetings and videos taken of those meetings. The staff were very, very involved, and I know we're very hopeful that over time that we would be addressing some of the concerns that they had in each of those situations. I understand the politics. I understand the situation in terms of the difficult decisions you'll have in the future in terms of where we go next. But I would urge people, if they have an opportunity, to take a look at those videos or take a look at the minutes of those meetings, because I think each of the schools, obviously the people at the high school, the people at Dodd in particular, had a lot of questions and issues, and were really looking for some action in the somewhat future to address those. So, if at any time I can be of help to the council, I'm more than glad to jump in on that.
So to dovetail off what you just talked about, I know that the Board of Education Planning Committee is going to be discussing the next phase of school modernization and planning for that. So I would definitely talk to Chair Rosenberg about making yourself available for those meetings, because they will kick things off.
Yeah. And there were clearly, as a couple of you know who were on the committee, there were, phases that were established within the report that was done, and that report is online and available. But time has gone by too. I think, clearly, there'll need to be some new demographics and maybe a review of some of the recommendations that were in there in terms of the, what phases should be looked at next and how we want to proceed. But just wanted to offer my support.
Thank you, appreciate it. And I know that the updated demographics is something that Mr. Mylone brought up at that meeting as well. We're not exactly the same community we were when we started down the 2 elementary school road, and I think it behooves us to take a look at where we're going to be, and that may affect what we look at as the next step of our
I looked at
modernization, so.
my minutes today, and we started in 2019.
Yeah.
So we'll be opening these schools 2026. So, Mr. Jenks had mentioned you're sometimes closer to a decade between the time you start talking about these things and you actually open them. So it's not a quick process to turn this process around.
Very good. Yes, Ms. Kramer.
Thank you for your continued service on this project. and the fact that you're willing to throw yourself back into the fire. Either you're a glutton for punishment or you're truly dedicated to the field of education. So
Thank you.
I'll take either or both. Is there any way that we can get those minutes so we don't recreate the wheel on the Dodd and the high school from the staff, the opinions on what it's like in the trenches in
They
those
should
schools?
all still be online. I'll check to see. When
Can
the
we get
School
those-
Modernization Committee was created, everything was put online, all the minutes, all the videos. I assume that those were never taken down, that they're still available.
It's
but-
just
but
easily
we-
accessible, just click through, or
Yeah,
can Noel send it to us collectively?
We'll,
I don't want to task anybody with anything.
between Sean and I, I'm sure we can just find, the links for that, and you can go through. And as I said, there were extensive minutes taken of each of the
Invaluable.
meetings.
Thank you.
And videos. The videos obviously would be, take a long time to sit and go through those, but we had 2 meetings at the high school that were probably 2 hours each. We had a meeting at Dodd that was at least 2 hours long. So, and the staff came out in large numbers. They were very anxious for us to hear their experiences.
Ms. Pearson?
Just to echo, I know I attended a couple of those meetings, and it was important to hear people who are in the classroom every day working in those buildings with students in terms of their needs. So, yeah, I agree with you 100% that repeating that kind of process in terms of engaging people in the schools, because like you said, things have changed, but that part of the process is incredibly important. So
Yeah.
thank you again for highlighting that.
Okay.
And please pass along, as we always
I do every month.
the council's appreciation to your committee.
Okay,
Thank you.
very much.
We'll see you in November.
All right.
Moves us to new business. Items 8A is the approval of contract renewal with Trinity Health for ambulance services, and we will not be having executive session, and I will call on Ms. Kramer.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 100824-2. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby approves the successor agreement with Trinity Health for ambulance services, and be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute this agreement pursuant to the terms and conditions as presented, and the approval by the Town Attorney as to form and function.
We have a motion from Ms. Kramer. We have a second from Mr. Jinks. Discussion. I'll turn it to Mr. Kimball for a summary of the contract.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is a recommended 5-year successor contract. This has been negotiated with myself and Chief Kasner, who's here tonight, with the folks, Dave Koskak from Trinity. We've been meeting a number of times over the last few months to hammer out this agreement. And we think we have a very fair agreement and very beneficial for the town of Cheshire here. For each of the 5 years in this contract, there is a 1% annual escalator. As you're aware, the entire base amount for the ambulance contract is $339,000. So that equates to an annual increase of about $3,459. And over the entire life of the contract, it's a total of $17,295 increase. This, just as way of some background, we entered into our last 5-year contract at the time with Campion Ambulance, which was effective from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2024. Subsequently, very soon after, Campion was acquired by Trinity Health of New England Medical Services, or Trinity Ambulance, as we say. And then the town also amended this contract in 2022 to add a second dedicated ambulance for Cheshire during peak hours. So all of those terms stay. At the time, we had a full really overhaul of that contract at the time. It's, again, proven very beneficial to the town. Trinity holds the primary service area responder designation for the town of Cheshire. And we also had previously introduced with that last amendment, a 50% profit share model for business in the town of Cheshire. And this last year, that resulted in a credit back to us of $35,207. and that gets applied to the next year. So effectively, our ambulance service contract for the year drops from that $339 to just about $300,000. So I think it served us very well. They've made a lot of investments, as they promised, for folks that remember the days when we had Campion. Trinity just frankly has more horsepower and finance behind it, and they've been investing, as they promised they would, in new equipment, Lucas devices, which have been used actually even just a few weeks ago, and other key pieces of equipment that we're glad to see serving on the ambulances and the fly car for the town of Cheshire, and we would ask for your approval.
Questions regarding the Trinity contract? Seeing none, Chief Kasner, is there anything you wanted to?
I'm happy to answer any questions, but Sean covered pretty much everything.
Perfect.
Actually, you know what? I have a quick question. You said during peak hours, does that mean that the secondary ambulance will not be available for hours outside of normal business hours, such as between 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
Do you have that, Sean? It's my
Right, we have
understanding-
2 dedicated ambulances during peak hours. We always have 1 dedicated ambulance, and so you also always have a system of backup ambulances that come, are either stationed at the border of Cheshire sometimes, or mutual aid that will come to serve as backup for the primary ambulance during off-peak hours.
I was
So,
just wondering
yep.
how we don't have a secondary ambulance not during peak hours or an additional one if we are using it, like, are we renting it from another hospital or another town or something like that, or?
I think Chief Kasner can answer your question.
Yeah, the ambulance is a piece of equipment that's owned by Trinity, and on a monthly basis, we monitor call volumes in the busiest times. It's a 12-hour shift, and we've already shifted it once because it was 9 to 9. We moved it to 10, from 10 to 10. So we have the ability to adjust that 12-hour shift to where we see we need it the most.
Okay, so essentially the town is renting out the ambulance from Trinity to be able to offer for better services during peak hours.
Yeah, I wouldn't say renting. It's just included in the fee. But
Semantics.
if they own the ambulance, they provide the staffing.
Okay.
So we increase staffing during those 12 hours, and if we need it. They do somewhere around 4,000 calls a year.
Okay,
And
sounds
we adjust it based on call volume and demand.
So like 100 calls a day, okay.
I'm not sure, I don't know what the math off the top of my head.
65 times 10 plus a little bit more,
Yeah. Any other questions? Our town attorney, D'Onofrio, has gone through it along with counsel
Yeah.
from Trinity, so
Yep.
I can't speak the legal stuff, but have to.
No, the only comment that I would make is that they've been good corporate partners with us. We did ask for the second ambulance when we were able to negotiate that. They are making significant investments in their equipment and making sure that we have, quote-unquote, state-of-the-art equipment
Yeah, without
for us. And certainly their numbers are good too, so.
Yeah, I think Sean alluded to it, that we were trying to get the former provider to purchase a Lucas device, which is a device that does chest compression,
Yeah.
so you free up a body and you can administer drugs to a patient. And I've seen that used personally twice in the past 2 weeks. So, and it does increase survivability.
Yeah.
So they've kept up their end of the bargain.
Thank you, Chief. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item 8B, the acceptance and appropriation of a $8,375.69 grant from the Office of the Secretary of the State, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds to be used for costs related to implementing and conducting early voting. Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 100824-3. Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts and appropriates a $800,375.69 grant from the Office of the Secretary of State for costs related to implementing and conducting early voting. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all documentation for said grant.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Pearson, back to you for a
Yeah, so this is pursuant to Public Act 2481. This is from the Connecticut Secretary of State, and we've received $10,000, I believe, for early voting in the past, so this is an additional $8,000 plus that will primarily be used to pay for poll workers. Early voting is going to be taking place October 21st through the 31st, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and November 1st through 3rd, same times. And on October 29th and 31st, there are different times, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and all that information can be provided on our website or on the state website. Very excited that we have this early voting opportunity in our state. This will enable a number of folks who have a difficult time getting to the polls on Election Day to actually engage in voting in our communities.
questions. Ms. Allard.
I just wanted to make sure that in the future, since we can't exactly guarantee we're going to be getting these grant funds, will we be ensuring that a budget line item will be added for early voting?
Yep, I think that would be the plan during the budget process, and I think that would be a prudent thing to do.
Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item C is the acceptance and appropriation of $23,835.51 in National Opioids Settlements Funds to be used for continuation of the opioid remediation programs. Ms. Allard.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 100824-4. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby accepts and appropriates $23,835.51 from the National Opioid Settlement to the Human Services Special Revenue Account for the continuation of the opioid remediation plan as approved by the Town Council.
We have a motion. We have a second for Mr. Walsh. Thank you. Ms. Allard to open discussion.
Yep, it's my understanding that this is just a continuation of the class action lawsuit. I'm not so sure that, class action lawsuit that basically is also indicating that Jensen Pharmaceuticals was liable, and there are funds within that existing lawsuit that are due to Cheshire.
Questions from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Move to item 8D, discussion and possible approval of legislative requests for 2025 session. And I know that Mr. Kimball is going to be passing down, take one down and pass it around, the updated list. There was one removal and one addition from what colleagues have seen in their packets. Item 1 is the Cheshire-specific request for notwithstanding legislation for a space standard waiver for new North End and Norton School projects. Item 2 is eligibility for the revised reimbursement rates for early education construction. Item C is the Cheshire Bus Depot property request for an additional 1.554 acres and to make that a state conveyance. And then 2 general legislative requests, an increase to Connecticut General Statute 7-145V, municipal competitive bid limit. And number 5 is electronic publication of legal notices. Questions from colleagues regarding the agenda? And I apologize that you're just seeing the last one, which is the electronic publication of legal notices tonight. Publication of legal notices, including public hearing notices, are still required to be published in a newspaper with significant circulations in a municipality, with diminishing newspapers and coverage areas, and with the major role that electronic information now holds. Electronic publication offers the same or enhanced reach as print media. In addition, the change in this requirement could save Cheshire and other municipalities tens of thousands of dollars annually. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I agree with that one. I think that's an important thing we have to push our legislators. I'm not sure how big the newspaper lobbyists are up there anymore, and maybe this might be the year where they can change that over to electronic notices. As less and less people are reading the newspapers and more people are going online. So I am very disappointed that the prevailing wage was removed from there. And I understand, Ms. Pearson voiced her opinion on it, but there were some of us who felt it was important. For many years, we've been asking for the increase from 100,000 to 500,000 for renovations, because anytime the state gets involved in something, it delays projects. Our town manager has said for years he was hoping that we could do that. And I think by taking that away, it's tying the hands of our town on that. Granted, it probably won't get passed through the state because of the makeup of the legislature, but I still think it's an important item to have on there. And when we say, the prevailing wage, I don't think this town has ever paid minimum wage to people to have projects done. We've always paid a fair fees, just like we do with the non-union workers who work in this town. They get fair wages. I just feel that by not being able to increase that, it ties our hands and makes projects take a lot longer. Like I said, though, in the past, we come up with a lot of these things every year that I've been on here, and many of them just fall to the wayside because it just doesn't get anywhere. So I think it's good that we're not having the state representatives there, because it became more of a battle between them all. But I think it's important that we voice the opinions of everybody on this council and not just one group. And also, we should listen to our town manager and our town employees who feel that that might be an important part that would make their jobs a little bit easier as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else? Ms. Allard.
I'm unclear how changing the prevailing wage will make the project take longer.
Are you, talk to our town manager about projects that have to get approval through state. Anything going through the state takes longer. I mean,
But increasing the prevailing wage threshold really just changes the amount of projects that we would be either required or not required to pay a prevailing rate. Is that correct?
Yes, I can answer the first part. Just to clarify, at least in my experience with projects, there is, and I'll turn to Town Attorney D'Onofrio in just a second. You do with projects have to request prevailing wage numbers every time you're ready to go for the actual bid. So that can take, sometimes that takes, I think it's 3 weeks to a month for the turnaround. So that can delay projects a little bit, but I don't think it's typically much longer than that. But yeah, I guess I'll turn the rest of the question over to Jeff.
There's been discussion about increasing the prevailing wage rate for renovation alteration projects for quite some time. The legislature increased the cost threshold to $1 million for new construction a few years ago. And at that time, there was a push to increase it 100 to 400. I mean, the reality is that $100,000 in 2024 is a very low threshold. And if you require, I've seen in other towns where they'll put a project out to bid and not advertise it as prevailing wage, and then call Mr. Wet blanket D'Onofrio and have me tell them it needs to be prevailing wage, and then we go out to bid and we see the cost bump. A lot of small contractors are not set up to do certified payroll, so that causes you to have less competition on the very small projects. I mean, the reality is, and it's not just Connecticut, but the United States as a whole, the cost of construction has escalated to the point where $100,000, even in residential construction, isn't a lot of money anymore. So for some of the smaller projects that the town undertakes that are in that, $200,000-$300,000 range, which there are quite a few, because I do look at the invitations to bid and provide the contracts, it might be beneficial to not have to wait for the prevailing wage information from DOL and to open up the competition to more smaller contractors.
Ms. Eller?
So, as a new council person, this is new to me, and I think regardless to where we come from, we all kind of come to the table with different experiences. So I don't really see it as our job or requirement to absolutely know everything, have all of the answers on the fly when things are presented to us, but I feel that it is our responsibility to try to learn as much as we can about it and, come to the conclusion after performing some due diligence. And while I have to admit, of course, I'm not well-versed on this, I did do some research, and it seems as though when we weaken the prevailing wage threshold, some states don't even have the prevailing wage at all, it actually really just affects the laborers, the people who are on the job, the ones who are working, the construction workers in the heat in the middle of summer and the cold in the middle of winter, the ones who are doing these physically demanding jobs. To me, it seems as though it's almost like having a coupon for your favorite restaurant, which, who doesn't love to save money? I sure do, right? I'm very, very cheap. You will find me at Goodwill shopping. Me too. See, I love that. And who doesn't love a bargain? But if you knew that that coupon was coming out of your server's paycheck, you might feel a little differently about taking that discount. And this is what this seems like when we lower, or I should say increase the prevailing wage threshold. What we're doing is we're weakening the protection for workers, and that is a concern for me. So.
May I say something?
This really isn't Mr. Perdian, this really isn't a dialogue for, thank you, I apologize.
So that is a concern of mine with changing that.
Mr. Malone?
Peter, thank you. And I don't have a strong opinion on this. I would say that because an entity doesn't offer prevailing wages doesn't mean that their employees are in any disadvantage. Sometimes they just offer a different working environment. Pay is very similar, oftentimes more in private sector entities that don't comply with prevailing wages. So to assume that the employees are taking the brunt of that, I think, is probably an overreach. I think there's just different entities that are set up to do different types of projects in different ways, but that doesn't always mean that employees are getting less payment. Sometimes it does. Other times it doesn't. So I think some shops are set up so that they want to be prevailing wage shops and others are not, but it doesn't always mean that the employees are paid less or their benefits are less. Many times, private entities that don't have prevailing wages treat their employees very well and give them tremendous benefits, and they have employees that have been with them for many, many years and are benefiting from those long-term relationships. So I think it's nice to have all types of opportunities for contractors and vendors to comply in different ways, and there's not one size fits all for this. So I do think it would have been nice if we offered that, but as Don said, I think it's unlikely the legislature would have complied with that. So I'm not sure if it's worth us making a significant issue out of it. I just think we should keep an open mind to the opportunities to benefit the town, not necessarily by diminishing anyone. Wouldn't want to do it if it diminished anyone either. I couldn't agree with you more, so.
Any other comments? Ms. Allard?
I thank you for that information. I'm happy to hear that, and I would agree that I'm sure that's not the case for every employer. I'm sure some employers, offer very competitive and, generous packages to their employees. So I think that being the case, I don't understand why if that were the case, they really shouldn't have an issue with a prevailing wage, with the state's standard wage for that particular job. And in my studies, studies do show that when the prevailing wage laws are diminished and decreased, people do have a harder time making a livable wage, and there are more people who are more full-time workers who are relying on like social services. So I agree with you. I just want to make sure that, yes, we do need to be careful that we're not spending more than necessary, but we just don't want that to be on the backs of labor workers.
Mr. Veliver, and then Ms. Pearson.
Thank you very much. And I agree with Don that, I agree on this conversation. I think it's interesting, and it's obviously discussion, and ultimately, right, we realize that the legislature won't actually get this passed. We've asked for it for many years. It's not going anywhere. But that being said, I think it would be nice to at least include it, because I think it still sends a message to our legislators that this is something they should be looking at, especially at these very small levels. I mean, we're not talking about big projects. We're not talking about the school project. We're talking about small, very minor projects. $200,000 for a municipality is like putting up a shed in your backyard. That's, equivalent. So we're not talking about big projects. So we're not talking about cutting people out of big projects, or somehow these people are all going to go on welfare because we didn't have a project for them. But I think one of the issues I have for it is that I understand that, right, the fear is that this somehow comes out of people's salaries and this is going to somehow force all these workers out of jobs, but that's not going to happen. But more importantly, although the issue's there, this impacts taxpayers. And every project that we do that we are forced to use prevailing wage, even on these small projects, force the town to pay more and more money for small projects. And one of the things it does is it leads us to, costing us more money. But also it costs potentially over time. There's projects that we've perhaps not done because it costs more money. And there's things that we can do that we don't do because of some of these costs. So there's more projects that we could do if they were at a more competitive cost. I understand everyone's going to be concerned about the workers and their wages, but the more jobs that we can do, the more we can have people actually get paid. So I know that there's not the appetite to push this prevailing wage issue. Not only is there not the interest on this council, but there's not an interest at the legislature either. But I just wanted to say that it would be nice to keep that in there, because it is important for us to send a message that as a municipality, we need to look out for our taxpayers as well. So thank you.
Ms. Pearson?
I just want to say I want to thank Councilor Allard for so clearly articulating some of our concerns, some of my concerns. And I would just like to remind Councilor Veliver that our workers are our taxpayers, right? They are people who invest in our communities as well. And so if we are ensuring that their wages are in line with what the Department of Labor has determined to be a fair wage, that we should be paying those individuals that fair wage. And so I appreciate that we're not going to spend our energy on that particular issue at this moment in time. And I do support these other issues, these specific to Cheshire requests and the electronic publication of legal notices. So thank you.
I do also agree that I support these other ones, but I do think that one thought I had was, there's, Mr. Chairman, you would raise the issue of possibly saving money for the town. through this electronic publications, and I agree that that is a good thing, but I think if we could get the prevailing wage changed, we would save a lot more money than the electronic notice.
Ms. Ellard, and
I just also wanted to add that studies do show that when the prevailing wage requirements are weakened, that the work is often the workers actually come from outside the community because they're willing to work for a cheaper rate. So keeping a prevailing wage will actually keep the workers here in the community more likely to actually be the ones providing the labor. They're making a livable wage, less likely to require assistance. So yes, I fully agree that we need to be very cautious of the taxpayer. And I think that that's why when we are deciding whether or not we do renovations, you know, we really need to be mindful of that. I'm a homeowner, and my home is in need of some repair that's been, you know, on the list for a long time. I'm not insensitive to that. We all need to make those difficult decisions, but I'm not at all comfortable with saving money for the taxpayer when it comes down to undercutting the wages for the labor workers.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, just wanted to add one last thing. I mean, we've heard a lot about that, but I think the most important words we heard were from our town attorney, who said this, by increasing it, it will help some of the smaller companies who may not have the ability to do all the paperwork that's required for the state to do these jobs. And I think, you know, I appreciate Ms. Allard looking up all these different surveys and things like that, but I listened to our town attorney, who has been in this for many years and understands why it's important that we do this. And I would just add one more thing, that, you know, I wish this could be a little bit more inclusive method. I mean, this was on our list last time, and the three of us found out as you handed it out to us that you removed one that we all felt was important. And, you know, we're not always going to agree on everything. I'm going to tell you that right now, but sometimes, you know, it wouldn't hurt to keep something in once in a while that we might want added in there as well. So, thank you.
Ms. Pearson?
All I was going to say is perhaps we could appeal to our legislators to actually support small business owners in terms of that process, and to enable more small business owners to engage in prevailing wage and to make it a less bureaucratic process.
Mr. Jinks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been very patient, by the way. So as far as the prevailing wage piece of this, I mean, the message I think that we've been getting for quite some time from the legislature is that they're not interested in dealing with this at the moment. So one thing that I like about these recommendations that we have, especially to do with the first three, is it really focuses our legislators on kind of the most pressing needs that we have right now as far as the new school construction. That's going to be significant cost savings if we can get them to get some legislation for especially those first two items. And then the item that we added as far as the legal notices, I mean, we all know the issue there. I mean, it's one thing to have that requirement, you know, be in place when you have an actual local newspaper, but we don't even have really a local newspaper anymore in Cheshire. So it's really kind of punitive to keep forcing us to have printed legal notices. So I'm very supportive of the addition of that item in this list. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, I'll take the last word before I throw it to Mr. Jinks for a resolution. So I've been in this council for 13 years, so this is my 13th legislative agenda. I think it's fairly safe to say that the first 7 years I was on the council, the legislative agenda was identical for 7 years, and Ms. Talbot can back me up on that one. There certainly weren't a lot of changes. We were putting on things that we were never getting. again, notwithstanding my personal opinion on the issue, it was my recommendation that we finally put prevailing wage to rest and take it off this year and add something new. As Mr. Walsh mentioned, we're not involved with bringing our legislators in anymore. I like Mr. Kimball's idea of adding the Cheshire-specific items that we have and throwing on the other two. And with that as the final word, I will throw it to Mr. Jinks for a resolution.
Peter, just on one thing about this, because I've always asked for this, if we can ask our state legislators towards the end of the session for a follow-up on these things that we've asked them to do, and what has come through, what isn't coming through, and why it's not coming through, I think that would be helpful to all of us to know why these things didn't get through, and I think that would just help us all to understand and maybe help us prepare for next year's.
I think that's an excellent idea to do a wrap-up, and I'll get to you in a sec, Ms. Kramer. So this is a long session this year, ends in June. People are away for the holidays. Maybe we could do something in September towards that, and that would help us plan for the next year's. And with that, Ms. Kramer.
All progress on any proposed bills is all online, whether it goes from the very initial steps of if it even gets worded into a proposed bill, a raised bill, from the beginning to the end of the process, it's all thoroughly documented online, whether it goes to public hearing, who signs it, who speaks to it, the testimony, it's all published online. The only thing that would not be available to us is why it doesn't get picked up. If no language from our suggestions get picked up into some sort of raised bill, that's the only part of the process that we wouldn't be able to find online. And I don't know who would be able to give you that information if a committee decides not to bring that up in the very beginning of the process. I don't know if that's information that's shared with the public. But the rest of the process is all clickable online at CGA.
Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 100824-5. Be it resolved the town council approves the legislative recommendations as presented.
We have a motion, we have a second for Mr. Walsh. We've certainly done the discussion portion, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Brings us to item E, assignment of projects to the Public Building Commission. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 100824-6. Be it resolved that the town council assigns the following projects to the Public Building Commission. Number 1, boiler replacement at the police station. Number 2, improvements to the Harmon Leonard Jr. Youth Center. Be it further resolved that the town council waives the requirements in section 2-26 of the Code of Ordinances and instructs the Public Building Commission to comply with the town purchasing policies of section 7-8 of the town charter for these projects.
We have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We have a second from Mr. Veliber. Thank you. Discussion, Mr. Wolf?
I don't have much background on these two. Mr. Kimball, if you could kind of fill in the blanks.
No problem. Yeah, so typically annually after we've adopted the capital budget, there will be a referral to the PBC for those projects that are most appropriate for their oversight. And in this case, we have 2 town projects that are deemed appropriate. We did check with the Board of Ed, and the projects that we have approved for them based on the size and scale and where they are were not deemed appropriate for PBC, given PBC's current group of other projects that, again, we just recently referred the pool boiler project and roof project to the PVC at our last meeting. And so our recommendation would be for these two projects at this stage to be forwarded to the PVC for their oversight.
Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item 9 on our agenda, the town manager report and communications. The monthly status reports are in your packet, and Mr. Kimball passed around earlier his town manager's report, and I will turn it over to him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, I would echo and encourage you to review the department status reports as you have the time. We'll skip ahead from Bartland Park South to additional updates, starting in the middle of page 2. I'm very pleased to actually I'd request you join me in welcoming Ray Harris, who began just yesterday as our Deputy Director of Public Works. Ray brings with him 15 years of experience in public works and construction. His previous position, he worked for the town of Simsbury over 4 years as a project administrator, managing maintenance, construction, energy efficiency, and repair projects for town assets and ensuring adherence to budgets, timelines, and quality standards. He served as staff liaison to the Sustainability Committee, where he led an initiative for the installation of EV chargers and also assisted with the town's application for silver level certification by Sustainable CT. Prior to that, he was a project manager for the Mattituck Museum and also previously assistant project manager for Colliers International and an inspection and construction materials field technician for the Independent Materials Testing Lab. So very pleased to have Ray join us and look forward to a lot of great assistance and projects through the Public Works Department. Ms. Pearson touched on this earlier, but there's a reminder for early voting starts on October 21st through November 3rd. Again, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on all of those days, with the exception of the 29th and the 31st, which will both be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. For any questions, please contact the registrar's office, 271-6680. Also, with respect to voting, a reminder, we have 3 projects for referendum vote on this upcoming ballot. And we have, the projects are $2.8 million for the road improvement program and East Johnson Avenue Road reconstruction, $435,000 for road reconstruction of Industrial Avenue, and $350,000 for replacement of the portion of Dodd Middle School roof. And explanatory text is available along with a sample ballot on our website. We have another monthly electronics and mattress recycling event that will be this Saturday, October 12th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. All of the typical requirements, also accepted grass clippings and leaves. Typical requirements are listed there below for mattresses, electronics, and the grass clippings. Any additional information or questions can be directed to the Public Works Department. Again, a reminder on the Projects Around Town website, a lot of updated information and photographs of projects going on around town. A few key updates just for the council here today. The EOC project for the basement on Town Hall is scheduled to go to bid in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are actually just now waiting on prevailing wage calculations from the state, and we'll be proceeding as soon as we receive those in a few weeks. The Yankee Expressway Highlands and mountain bike trails, as Mr. Jinks asked about earlier. I was speaking just last week with a representative from CT NEMBA, and they've secured a proposal, and the town has reviewed it and agrees with the scope for wetlands flagging of the property where the trail network is proposed. That total cost is $10,000, and the town will be paying for half of the cost using a portion of that $50,000 state grant we received for this project. Additionally, and there will be a more formal invitation here to follow, but I want to mark your calendars as the town council is being invited by the Planning and Zoning Commission for a meeting, listening session, similar to what are being held with other boards and commissions. The invitation, along with a questionnaire, will be shared with members closer to the meeting date. But as a reminder, this is a meeting of the PZC, and they are looking for input as they develop the plan of conservation and development. The town council is being scheduled to meet with PZC on Wednesday, November 13th at 7 o'clock p.m. And other than that meeting, you'll see on the last page just a few upcoming special meeting on the 17th. The Sustainability Committee is planning a meeting for Monday, the 21st at 9:30 in the morning, and our regular council meeting is Tuesday, November 12th. That concludes my report.
Questions for Mr. Kimball, starting with Mr. Malone.
So Sean, on the Yankee Expressway Highlands mountain bike trails, which I'm supportive of, I was liaison to the Environment Commission when this came up initially, and I think it's a great idea. We're mapping wetlands. What's the intent of mapping the wetlands? Where do we go from there?
So the intent is, some of the initial designs that we were presented with from NEMBA included crossings that we could see were adjacent to or within wetlands. So I think making sure that they stay out of any regulated areas. Other than that, I think that was just the first step we agreed to in our meetings, and I know Attorney D'Onofrio was there as well, as kind of a good first step before we continue to plan what the trail network's going to look like.
So they're going to map wetlands. Does that mean they're going to, if they in regulated areas, they're going to go to the Wetlands Commission?
Yeah, that's the purpose of having them map the wetlands is so that when they plan their courses, they can avoid wetlands, and to the extent that they're going to disturb a wetland, they'll have to go get a permit to conduct.
What about if they're in regulated areas? Are they going to have to go to the commission and get it if they're within the regulated area as well, even if they don't disturb a wetland? I
Yes.
just want to make sure we don't map the wetlands and then not do
Yes.
anything with it, that's all.
Yeah.
If we're spending this money to map the wetlands, we
Yep,
ought
that's
to,
the purpose of it.
yeah. So there'll be a published map when they're done?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious what the purpose was.
Mr. Jinks?
So what is, I guess following on his question there, once the wetlands are mapped, what's the sort of next process or next part of the process for this project?
They'll need to determine what regulatory approvals they need. So they don't have any drawings yet for what the course is going to look like. So what we told them to do is first get the wetlands mapped so you can figure out whether you're going to be disturbing any wetlands or what permitting you need, and then get your design done and then go from there, because they're going to need to go planning and zoning. So that's the next step, is to actually design the course once the wetlands are mapped and they figure out whether they need any approvals or not.
Right, okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Walsh? And then Ms. Pearson.
Just a quick thing, the Frisbee Golf Course is underway, I understand. Do you know a date when that might be completed, or?
I could follow up. I know they've been doing some activity out there to start the clearing, but I don't have a date.
Yeah, because from what I heard, I mean, they've done about maybe 5 or 6 holes they've already plotted out. I mean, they have a lot of volunteers, and I give them a lot of credit. It's a pretty active group that they have there, and I think it's an exciting addition to our town. But I know with the help of Ms. Schnitzer out there with the Environment Committee and going out and plotting out trees and plants and everything else, I think they're working pretty well to keep the environment, and the course. And, yeah, I'd just be interested to see how far along and when they feel. I don't know if it'll be done by this year or it's going to be something for the spring.
Yeah, I can find out when I have an update.
Yeah, I also agree. I know that having attended the Parks and Recreation meetings, the disc golfers are a very avid group, and they are very volunteer-minded, so I know that they are not only going to help with assist with the development of the course, but also the maintenance of the course, and so I thank all those folks. And I just also wanted to, I guess, welcome Ray Harris. I'm very much looking forward to having this person as a point person for our Sustainability Committee and also for the Sustainable CT team. And I know with Arnett Talbot retiring, we're losing our point person, so to know who will be taking her place, looking forward to meeting with him in the next few weeks, month, and looking at some of these goals that we may actually add to our list as we work right now on achieving silver certification in the town of Cheshire.
Mr. Velaber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, I know you, and I apologize, you may have mentioned it in your report in talking about our listening session with the Planning and Zoning Commission. In advance of this, is there going to be, is there sort of a questionnaire? Is there something that they're looking, what things are they looking, for us to give them? Obviously feedback, but I mean, is there some structure? Is there some already, like, are there sort of generic questions? I know they're obviously talking to other departments and stuff. Are we all sort of, are they looking for the same information from everybody, at least a structure, what we're thinking about? Is there any kind of, materials that we should be focusing on in advance of that meeting?
So yes, my understanding is there is an invitation along with the questionnaire. And other than that, I'd have to just follow up if there's any other guidance, but I think the questionnaire sort of leads towards what the conversation would likely be about at their listening session.
And is that meeting just with us, or is there other departments meeting with them at the same time, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe that time is the town council's time, but they've done multiples before in the night.
Agency work, meeting with them, but they will have council will have their undivided attention.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Ms. Allard?
I just wanted to, I know Chief Drife is not here, but I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the police department as I'm looking at the Cheshire Police Monthly Report. I'm noticing that the offenses are down in comparison to last year. Larceny is almost down, is down by almost 50%. Motor vehicle thefts, everything is down. So thank you very much to the police department. I'm happy to see crime overall across the country and as well as here in Cheshire is much lower.
Seeing nothing else, I'll just tell colleagues, and thank you for pointing out Chief Dreyfus. In your packet is Chief Kastner's as well. But I would encourage you to, notwithstanding the two chiefs, take a look at the economic development packet that Mr. Martelli put together for us. It really gives us an idea of what's going on from an economic development standpoint and some of the new exciting things that are coming to town. With that, I'll turn to item 10, reports of committees of the council, starting with item A, the chairman's reports. To my left with Ms. Kramer.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Wolf?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Allard?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Jenks? No report. Ms. Pearson?
No report.
And item 8, or 10, AI, and AI in this case is not artificial intelligence. Referral of section 16.6 fats, oil, and grease, the FOG management fees, back to the Ordinance Review Committee. And there is nothing in item 10B for miscellaneous. We'll move to item number 11, appointments. Item A is liaison reports, starting to my left. Ms. Kramer.
Would it be prudent to ask Karen if she has anything to offer on environment?
Well, we have our next meeting tomorrow.
Other than next meeting, do you have anything to report on last month's meeting? No? Okay, nothing to report.
Mr. Wolf.
Nothing to report.
Ms. Allard.
No report.
Mr. Jinks.
Yeah, one thing I just want to report, as far as Chesprocott goes, I think everyone's probably heard that they hired a new director. I think he had an article in the paper today with his background. Very nice guy, very long record and history and experience in public health, but just wanted to let everyone know that has happened. And then as far as economic development goes, yes, there's a great report here. A lot of great things happening in the north end that you guys all more or less aware of, but I believe the shopping center is, I think, 95% at least at this point. So it's definitely coming along.
We will be asking the new Chesprocott Health Director on Mr. Walsh's recommendation to attend our November meeting for an opportunity for us to meet him and hear what he has to say. Go ahead, John.
Since you mentioned Chesbrook, I'm just curious, where do they, Jim, where do they stand with the selection of an architect and moving forward with the building? Are they making progress? I'm just curious.
Actually, just asked our attorney about the status of that tonight, so.
Yeah, the contract has been approved, so we negotiated a contract with him. He's got, just as I indicated to Mr. Jenks, 12 weeks from start date to 100% construction documents. That's his schedule. 3 months.
Little behind what we hoped for. Thank you.
Ms. Pearson, liaison report.
Parks and Recs was delayed till tomorrow night as a result of the Jewish holiday, and Energy Commission continues to monitor energy usage in our public facilities and exploring battery storage usage for the new schools.
Mr. Walsh?
And I know you all look forward to the beautification updates, so I'm going to continue that. The tree planting, they're going to be planting some trees down in the south end, I believe, where Cheshire Wine and Spirits South is. And I believe the Cunningham building down, further down where the lawyers and offices. They are also, a representative of the Pollinator Pathway came to discuss the garden they want to put at Mixville. And under the recommendation of the Beautification Committee, they asked that it not be put in the island in front of the guardhouse because they felt it would block the views of the person in the guardhouse, and it could block the views of cars coming and going. They felt it would be better to put it behind the stone wall, so she's going to bring that back to her committee and have that discussed. They also, if you go to the senior center on the south side of the senior center, they did pull out a lot of bushes and plantings and planted new ones, but from what I understand, I think they pulled out more than they were supposed to, so the rest of it's going to get all new plantings as well. They are also looking to do this, the north side of the senior center. I think there has to be some painting maintenance and porch maintenance, but they're on top of all of this stuff, and you know, they're trying to keep our community looking beautiful. And if you look at the parklets around town, I mean, they have a lot of the mums out there that were kindly donated by Kurt's Farms. And I think they really make it look nice with that splash of color all over town. So, and the King Road, they should be tearing out all of that ugly bushes and trees and things there shortly, and then they're going to determine what will be planted there as well. So, thank you.
Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing too major. I just wanted to point out that, of course, I forgot my notes on the last library board meeting, but they are doing very well and the library has been extremely successful over the past few months through the summer and even continuing into the fall as far as with their programs and getting both older and younger people to utilize the library more. They've really had an uptick in terms of their usage numbers, and it's been very successful there. So they're doing a great job there at the library.
Mr. Milone? I had, I'll do a quick shout out as my liaison report. I had the opportunity to attend the class of 74's 50th high school reunion. Sunday, we were at Bartlam Park, and I cannot tell you how many classmates commented on the difference that from the people that hadn't been there in 50 years and commented what a beautiful park it has become, meaning that it's come a long way in the 50 years they were there last. So quick shout out to Park and Rec and Public Works on the improvements and in how things look there. With that, I'll turn it to our town attorney for a report.
No report, thank you.
Sure.
Update on the dogs? Any update yet?
Bankruptcy court hearing is Thursday to approve the settlement. 2 days.
And we are still going to have to chip the dogs and all that stuff before we could do anything, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We haven't done that yet.
No.
Okay.
And I apologize, I'm going to go backwards because I skipped 11B. Mr. Veliver, do you have any appointments tonight? Mr. Wolf does not either, so it's a good thing I skipped it. Yes, exactly. So that concludes item 12. We'll move to 13, council communications. If anyone would like to share letters to the council, I have none. Seeing none, we'll move to B, miscellaneous, nothing there. Items for executive session, and we do have a ever so brief one for land acquisition. So I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to include our town attorney, our town manager, our assistant town manager, our town clerk, and we will say goodnight and farewell to Mr. Jascott. So I'll entertain that motion from Ms. Allard and a second from Mr. Veliber. All those in favor? We are now in executive session.